and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa, and today I'm going to be talking about why I was a weird kid, specifically relating to my autism. I just recently, meaning about 6 months ago, figured out that I have ASD, that's autism spectrum disorder. I remember things good. And I wanted to talk about specifically how that manifested when I was a kid for autism awareness sake, and also because I like to talk about my autism because it's new to me. So hopefully this will be a mix of entertaining and educational. It is based off of / inspired by Amazing Phil's Why I Was a Weird Kid little series. He was a weirder kid than me, despite possibly being neurotypical. Basically, the reason I was not diagnosed as a kid was, one, I had parents who didn't really care that I was weird. And it wasn't severe enough to interfere with my being able to learn things in school. And two, I was a woman with, or girl, female, with Asperger's / autism, and people aren't so great at recognizing the signs because they're different. And girls are generally better at masking, which means fitting in with neurotypicals, which is anybody who is not have some weird wiring in their brain. So let's get started. One thing that I did have in common with a lot of people who are diagnosed with autism is I actually did have a special interest. But even when I figured out that I had ASD and was trying to figure out which of the symptoms I fit, I didn't really realize this was a special interest for a while, because I thought, no, that's a perfectly normal amount to care about this one thing. Lots of people care that much about it. And as I thought about it more and more, I was thinking, maybe not. So my special interest would be stories. That's pretty broad, but specifically I have been hyper interested in anything that comes across as a story, be it a movie, a TV show, a book, a video game, any of those things. I'm super into them. This is connected to my love of escapism, which is another autistic thing. But I also got into writing them, and I started trying to write my own stories when I was 8. And I started studying story craft probably when I was 11 or 12. And I kept on writing from the time I was 8 until currently. But I was always super into the craft of storytelling, even when I didn't know what that was. And I started getting obsessed specifically with language as a way of communicating stories maybe when I was 13. Hence my reading and absorbing and remembering anything that has to do with grammar, punctuation, new words, how language forms and how it comes to be. I've written really long blog posts on just the semicolon, because I love semicolons, because I care about that kind of thing, because I have a special interest in it. And I now talk about it on BookTube and Twitter and other places because I'm very into it. But it did have roots when I was a kid. Now, more normal kid stuff, but that is especially common among autistic kids. I didn't want my foods to touch. I was totally not okay with my foods touching. I didn't throw a tantrum when my foods touched. I just moved. I blockaded part of the food that wasn't touching the other food, moved it over, cut into the other food, moved it over, so there's just the befouled bit in the middle that I wouldn't touch, and then I could eat the other parts. But also I couldn't use the same utensil to touch different foods that I didn't want to mix, but I couldn't use a fork that had touched one thing and then use it to eat another thing. And I couldn't lick it off. I had to clean it off with a napkin, and I used a lot of napkins for both that and I don't like moisture on my skin anywhere. So if I ever got any kind of food on my skin, or even if I got water on my skin from condensation on a glass, if I picked up a glass and it was wet, I would have to wipe that off immediately after putting it down. And related to that, I obsessively dry off my hands when I have washed them. They need to be completely and totally dry between all the creases and everywhere, and be totally dry. And I do not like moisture on my skin. I'm looking down at this book where I have my notes. Another reason I was a weird kid was I was more empathetic than your average 8-year-old. Most of my solid, regularized memories start when I was about 8. I only remember patchy stuff from before that, but I have been highly empathetic for as long as I can remember. It's been said in the past that autistic people have trouble with empathy, but we actually don't. We empathize really well. We're just not good at understanding what you want from us. So like in conversation, somebody's feeling sad. I can tell they're feeling sad. I don't know what to do to make them feel better or to communicate to them that I understand that they're sad and that I want to help. That's the part that eludes us. Understanding that they're sad and even taking on their emotions and their sadness making us sad, which is empathy as opposed to sympathy, which is just knowing they're sad and feeling bad about that. Actually taking on their emotions and understanding how other people feel actually comes to us quite well, especially the women, but men too don't have as much trouble as people say they do. But I was highly empathetic in that, as I talk about still now, I can't stand character death in books. I can't stand anyone around me being unhappy, which is somewhat unhealthy, but it's not so bad if they're just sad. It's really upsetting when they're worried or panicky, because that, I don't actually mind feeling sad. I much more mind feeling, which happens when, for example, my mom gets irritated, or dad gets, they both struggle with technology like a lot of people's parents, and when they would get, and still when they do currently get upset about their technology and throw a fit about it, that would make me very grumpy, and I have to help them with it. And it's really difficult to be patient and walk them through something when their upsetness is making me upset. And I felt this way since I was a kid. I have really tried to stay away from and shut down around people who are panicky or angry. That's another one that is very unpleasant. Like if a teacher is upset with a kid, even if it's not me, I will be upset both for the sake of the kid and for the sake of the teacher. It's very unpleasant. Another common autistic one, and also somewhat common among neurotypical kids, very sensitive to texture. Both, I was very sensitive to food texture. I have been a texture-based eater, much like Markiplier talks about he is in one of his recent McDonald's rating videos. I don't like the texture of cooked onions, raw onions, most any half-cooked vegetable, mushrooms of any kind. That grain stuff that's not quinoa, but something you make soup with. Anyway, it feels like the fat nodules off of hamburger. Speaking of which, I don't like the fat nodules off hamburger. I don't like a lot of meaty textures. I really like some textures of noodles, but there are textures of noodles that I hate. White tortillas that aren't crisp, I can take them if they're crisp, but if they're not crisp, and a lot more than that. And I don't just not like it, like I can grin and bear it, but like it makes me if you have emetophobia, I'm not going to talk about what it makes me feel like, but I did that quite a lot when I was a child. But I am also very sensitive to textures of things like fabric. Like for a long time, I would hear people talking on TV shows and stuff about how comfortable it was to be naked. If they could stay in their house all day with no one in their house, they would walk around naked. And I never understood that in any way, because one, I always pick clothes that have super comfortable textures and that I can forget I'm wearing, that I can forget exist. I don't have to think about them during the day. Like my nice Sunday clothes, I am thinking about when I'm wearing them because I can feel them because they're uncomfortable. But also, if I were naked, I would have to feel the textures of everything I sat on, like the texture of this fake leather, the texture of sheets, the texture of the couch, which would be horrible. I would not want those textures on my skin. How could you want those textures on your skin? It's much more comfortable to have clothing texture on your skin. Relatedly, I wore sweatpants till high school. That's all I wore. I did not wear jeans or slacks or any of that. Sweatpants. except for things like, you know, dance class or church or things that you had to have a special outfit for. Even when I went to our homeschool program, I was homeschooled, which is another reason I was not diagnosed as a child, because nobody cared that I was weird. Nobody cared. It's fine. Let her be weird. But even when I went to our homeschool co-op, which is where you go to classes once or twice a week, taught by the school district but not in a regular school, you go with a bunch of other homeschoolers. Even when I went to that, I wore sweatpants until high school. Then I decided I cared what people thought of me slightly. Still wouldn't wear makeup, still only put my hair in a ponytail, was not gonna spend time on my looks. I was just gonna throw on jeans and a t-shirt is what I upgraded to from sweats and a t-shirt. That's as far as I was gonna go. Comfort was the priority because I was uncomfortable very easily. Related to that, another one is I did not care what people thought of me. I wanted to have friends, but I was rebellious and snobbish enough even when I was a pretty little kid that I did not want friends who would not like me because of what I wore or how I looked. If people were going to be friends with me, it was because they were going to be fellow geeks or if they were just nice people. But I was not going to change how I looked or how I acted outwardly to make friends, because that would be shallow. Once again related, I didn't have many friends. I had one friend, which was fostered by both our parents, and I met said friend pre my social anxiety becoming a thing, which happened when I was in 3rd grade, and is a comorbidity with autism, very common. But before I had that, I made this one friend and managed to hold on to this friend because our parents were involved and could help with that. But other than that, I filled in with imaginary friends. For one, I had 3 imaginary friends who lived in my brain. It was very much a la, very much like that. I had 3 little people in my brain, just flipping switches and making me go. And one of them was very much like me and was like on my side all the time and was a great friend. One of them was the good one who was always who always wants me to do the right thing and the wise thing and the kind thing. One was more like the little devil on the shoulder versus the angel on the shoulder. And I named my goldfish after them. And then of course, once I started writing my stories, they were basically my imaginary friends. I didn't talk directly to them or them to me, but I spent a lot of time with them and basically got the friendship vibes that I needed from thinking about them. That leads me to being very into escapism again. Anytime I could, I would be reading or watching movies or watching shows or playing a video game. And pretty much RPG video games, and I was always wanting to not be here. The real world was not a pleasant place for me. I'd say this started about the time social anxiety happened. I hated going to school. I had very nice teachers, but I definitely noticed that I was the odd one out of the other students, and I felt nervous around them. And basically I didn't like real world things. There was nothing in the real world that held my interest, like cars or nature or I don't know what regular kids are interested in, but I was interested in fantasy and that's all I was interested in. By the way, still kind of that way. I am very excited about the VR thing. I don't have one yet because expensive, but when that stuff gets, you know, into the regular console type price range, I'm gonna be on that because that's gonna be as close to holo technology as we can get right now, and I want a holo suite so bad. Oh, then we have the ones that really make you look weird if you do them in front of other people. I stimmed when I was a kid. Didn't know what it was. Didn't think it was weird at all. This is normal. This is a thing that everybody does, or it's just a me thing. It doesn't mean there's something wacky with my brain. I'm not stimming now. I'm rubbing, what's it called? Moisturizer into my hands because I put it on a lot during the winter. But this is gonna be a bit gross. Skip ahead if you don't like eczema. But I had eczema. Probably started when I was 8. had eczema behind my ears, and I scratched those all the time, to the extent I would bleed. But I was just obsessed with scratching. Let me get a prop for this. Now this I only did when I was alone. I did the scratching whenever because I was obsessed with it. But this is a reproduction of my baby blanket, because my baby blanket got smoky in the fire, but I kept it together until then, and we still have it. It's the cat's blanket now because they still like it. But I would do this like a cat, and I would rub it on my face, and that would calm me down and make me feel a lot better when I did that. And I mean, it still does, but I started it when I was a kid. Now, instead of picking at my eczema, because I don't have eczema anymore, I finally stopped doing that long enough it healed. I do this. I rub my skin, and I rub it like really hard so that it hurts a little bit. But I do that whenever my brain isn't busy enough, because when my brain isn't busy enough, usually doing 2 things at a time unless I'm doing something that takes a lot of concentration, like filming a video or doing social interaction. But when I'm, say, watching TV and I don't have also like something I'm writing in or something I'm working on art-wise, or reading a book at the same time I'm watching TV, or I especially do it when I'm riding in the passenger seat of the car, because that doesn't take much concentration. I need to do something with my hands, so I rub my skin like this. Including my neck and my shoulders, and I try not to do it in front of people that I don't know very well, because it's a bit weird. I've always had quite powerful synesthesia, which is where you have crossed wires in your brain, and so multiple senses will become intertwined. So when you see, my particular kind is with numbers and colors. That's the main kind anyway. I heavily associate colors with numbers. So 1 is white, 2 is blue, 3 is purple, 4 is green, 5 is yellow, 6 is orange, 7 is blue, 8 is purple. 9 doesn't really have a color, and anything above 9 is a mix of the 2 numbers that it is. 0 is black. I don't like the number 56 because it's orangey yellow, and I don't like orangey yellow. My favorite number is 23 because it is bluey purple, which is my favorite color of those colors. For some reason, none of the numbers are pink, despite that being my favorite color. That's just not how synesthesia works. It doesn't pick your favorite color for some reason. But another association I have is I view certain smells as warm or cool, which is somewhat related to how they're used in marketing, because like summery smells like citrus, I associate as being cool. They tend to be on things that are marketed as like things you're supposed to sniff in the summer, whereas things you're supposed to sniff in the winter, like vanilla, almond flavor, cinnamon, pine, are all warm smells to me because you're supposed to sniff them in the winter. And then there is the part of autism that leads, we kind of think it leads to having social anxiety rather than just wires being crossed in a similar way leads to both autism and social anxiety, and that is that being autistic makes you not understand social cues and what you're supposed to do in social situations. Can lead to you being very awkward in social situations / just not knowing what you're supposed to do, and that can make you nervous and can lead to negative reinforcement or negative feedback, which makes you scared of those situations because you might get your feelings hurt again when people think you're weird. Lieutenant Barclay doesn't canonically have autism, I don't think, although he very much shows a lot of the signs. But the first way I identified with him was with his social anxiety and how he's scared of people. This is a character from Star Trek, by the way, Next Gen specifically, because I'm just thinking maybe you don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But he's a character who definitely has social anxiety, and he was talking to his superior officer, who is Lieutenant LaForge, and he was explaining that, for example, when he's talking to someone, he doesn't know what to do with his hands. And that was the first thing that I identified. It's someone else who doesn't know what to do with their hands. Because when I'm talking to someone, Like, I don't know if I should have my hands down at my sides or behind my back or in front of me, or like what to do with the hands. Is it weird to just stand with them by your side? Is it weird to have them behind your back? I know it's kind of weird to have them behind your back, but I don't understand how people what people do with their hands. I never, for some reason, I figured out how to mask a lot of other things, but I never figured out what people do with their hands. So now I just fold them in front of me or fold them behind my back, because I've just decided I don't care what other people do. I'm just gonna do what makes me feel comfortable. But yeah, I had the troubles when I was a kid, very much. And I'd like to do another one of these just focused on social anxiety, because that's a whole nother thing that I was very extra weird because of my social anxiety. I did some very weird things because of that. And it is a comorbid thing, but not all people with autism have social anxiety. So those are the reasons I was a weird kid. Overall, I wasn't that weird of a kid compared to some people, but I'd love to know what ways you were a weird kid in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!